Hello everyone, hope you're having a good day, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most unique systems in the Souls games, which is Bloodborne's gun parrying. This system has been very popular so that even modders like us have been implementing it in Dark Souls 3 and in Elden Ring, and in very different ways for these different approaches. But today what I want to talk about is how the Bloodborne gun parrying system works in Bloodborne, and we're gonna try to reflect and replicate how they attempted it in their own game and what's the best possible way to implement it here in Elden Ring. So without further ado, let us get into it. So the main key point in all of the gun parrying system are Havoc script files, which are HKS files that are basically controlling lots of different elements in the games, mostly related to animation. Now in those scripts there is one function that basically does the entire gun parrying system, and what it does is that it checks different conditions, let's call them, and if those conditions are met, then the gun parrying is succeeded and the enemy gets parried. Now if we take a look at it, you will find that there are four main conditions. The two first conditions are the main ones for the gun parrying system, and what they do is they check for SP effects. And what SP effects are, they're just simply effects that are applied to the player or the enemies. Now this basically tells the game, if the bullet hits the enemy during its parry window, activate the gun parry. Now this is one of the main key points, which is the gun parrying window. So how is it actually done in Bloodborne? Now in Elden Ring we did it in different ways. Some people did it during the parrying window, which is about 2-3 frames maximum, or some people did it during the weapon hitbox, or some people did it in a completely different and custom manner. However, if we take a look at Bloodborne, it's actually very interesting to see how they did it. Now, if we take a look at the animation files using one of the tools, DS Animation Studio, you can see that we have something called invoke attack behavior. And what this is basically is just the weapon's collision / hitbox. And basically, if the character is hit with that weapon during this hitbox period, this is where you get hit. And we can see under it, which is add SP effect and the number of the SP effect that we saw back in the script. So what this does is that during this part of the animation where this effect is applied to the character, this is the gun parrying window. And there are two very consistent things that we find in all of the enemies and the bosses in Bloodborne. The first is that the parrying window covers the entire attack hitbox / collision period, and that it starts before the attack begins. Now overall, like 90% of the enemies, they have that period start about 4 to 5 frames before the actual attack begins. And this helps the player basically predict when the enemy is going to attack and make use of that prediction to know when to launch the bullet to parry that enemy. Now for some enemies, for example like the church guards, the parrying window actually starts at the very start of the animation, way back before the attack starts. Now the other effect which you saw in the script is basically the effect that is applied when the bullet hits the character or the enemy. So when the bullet hits, this effect is applied. So in simple words, what's happening is that if the bullet hits the enemy during that parry window, activate the parry animation. That's basically it. Now the other two checks are more of a safety checks. It checks if that enemy has animations for being parried and if he is not in a state where he cannot be parried. And this is more of a safety check. It's used in some animations like when they are being backstabbed, for example, but the main juice, let's say, of the gun parrying system is within the two first conditions. Now, if we are going to be attempting to do this, how are we going to be achieving something like this in Elden Ring? Now, there are a couple of things that we need to take into consideration also with Elden Ring, is that there are some attacks that are parryable and some attacks are not parryable. And if you want to take the parry window, which is the previous way we actually implemented the gun parrying system, it will be a very minimal window and we won't be able to include all of the attacks. However, this is also something that we have to take into consideration because some of the very strong attacks, it wouldn't make sense for them to be parried by a gun. So we're going to be doing an in-between solution of sorts, is that we're gonna have the parrying window as the same length as the attack hitbox / collision, but it is only also applying to parryable attacks. Now, this will need some manual tinkering with very specific cases. So, for example, with Melania's waterfall dance, we can make it so that you only have the opportunity to parry it at the very start, or have it at a very specific swing at the middle, or there's like a lot of things that you can consider here, and it's gonna depend on like how you want to approach the boss fight. Do you want it to... We can make it easily just like during all of the swings you can parry it, but that will be like very easy, I think. Now there's also something else that we need to consider for some of the player animations. So when you look at the ornamental sword, it has this R2 after you use the weapon art where it keeps stabbing with both swords. Now surprisingly, the parrying window for this is actually only during the first swing, and during this long animation you can't actually parry that. So we're going to be putting a gun parrying window during that attack so it can punish the player if it misses hitting the enemy. Now in the Garden of Eyes mod, we have put also a special kind of bullet that when the enemy or boss is hit by it, for about 30 seconds it will show the player when exactly the gun parrying frames happen. Now this was not done to add an easy mode, but rather to allow the players to sort of study how the parry frames work and be able to learn and memorize the boss or the enemy's attacks, and to be able to recognize when those gun parrying frames happen. In the Garden of Eyes mod, we have more than 15 completely new designed weapons from scratch, and we have also 30 armors, 15 new spells, horse skins, and also completely new bosses which are going to be showcased very soon, and we're very excited that we are reaching a stage that we can actually show this to you guys. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and check out the Garden of Eyes mod from the videos and on my Patreon, and yeah, I'll be seeing you later.